Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This is the continuation of Todoroki's Conspiracy. This will be part 6, chapters 11 and 12. Chapter 11. Tenya's Thoughts, Hitoshi's Wishes. If there was one thing that Tenya believes above all else, it's that people do not deserve to be hurt. And if there's one thing that Tenya knows, it's that far too many good people get hurt when they do not deserve to be. Take Tensei, for example. Tensei who wanted nothing but to be a hero to help others when they needed it most. Tensei who dedicated himself to others and was unfairly punished for his actions. Tensei whose career and nearly his life was cut short by the hero-killer stain because he was deemed untrue. Tensei was hurt despite doing everything he could to be great, to be a true and proper hero, yet because he was not a symbol of peace, he was deemed insignificant. He was hurt despite being good. Yes, Tensei is a stellar example of one who's been hurt despite not deserving such pain, and there are plenty of others, like Aizawa-sensei who risked his life to protect Tenya and his peers, and came out scarred and covered in bandages, practically mummified, or Todoroki, who was harmed while trying to save Tenya after he made the foolish decision to hunt down Stain, or Izuku Midoriya, his peer who runs into danger despite the repercussions, who runs himself ragged for the sake of others, who is running into a rescue mission despite his arms still being braced from complete and utter decimation that they just went through mere hours ago. If Tenya could only use one word to describe the person that is Izuku Midoriya, he would have to use good. Midoriya is nothing if not the embodiment of goodness, and he is the first to offer a kind smile, to hand out praise, to give advice, to lend a hand in need. He is generous and selfless, willing to go beyond for the sake of others. He is so good, so pure despite all the hardships that he's faced. He is so much more than Tenya can ever be, and ever hope to be, and it pains Tenya to just see how much Midoriya is hurt, because Midoriya is hurt. He's hurt a lot, and by people who should never, ever have the urge to harm others. He's hurt by heroes and villains alike, despite signing up for a career that should only expect the second group of enemies. Midoriya is hurt, and yet he brushes it off, hides his pain behind a smile, and promises everyone that he's okay. He keeps going, like he believes he has to, like he believes he's the only one who might right the wrongs that go on around him, like he's the one to blame, the one who must make up for all that is flawed. Watching Midoriya jump into action, watching him prepare to risk everything, his schooling, his career, perhaps even his life, for a boy who's dismissive at best and hostile on a daily basis towards him, Tenya cannot help but wonder how Midoriya can keep going, can keep risking his own happiness and future for the sake of others, can keep breaking the rules and ignoring the consequences if it means helping just one more person. Tenya cannot help but wonder if Midoriya even realizes how much he's breaking himself. He cannot help but wonder if Midoriya knows that there are other ways to be a hero, ways that don't break him and leave him suffering even more every time. He cannot help but wonder if Midoriya only knows pain, only knows broken limbs and shaking smiles, only knows how to be pushed and pushed to the brink of exhaustion, to the brink of collapsing from sheer pain of trying to push forwards. Tenya cannot help but wonder if perhaps Midoriya wants to be expelled, and is going so far in hopes of being let free. A weird mix of not wanting to be hurt in the name of training, but also not wanting to turn his back on others, that spirals into more pain with every passing day. He wonders a lot, and he wonders if he'll ever get answers. And when they reach Kamino, Tenya does get an answer, but it's not to any of the questions he'd asked himself on the way there, no. This is one that manages to plant all the more dread into the engine-clad teen. No, instead, it's a question that Tenya has pondered for a while now, since the very beginning. Why did All Might choose Midoriya of all people to abuse? It's a question he's had for months, and one he could never give a justifiable answer to. Todoroki seemed to have a reason in mind, but never spoke of it in depth, simply saying that pro-heroes were easily corrupt. Uraraka believed it was because Midoriya is too shy to speak up, and seems to have a habit of blaming himself for his injuries, mixed with his obvious idolization of not just heroes, but especially All Might. She thinks that the Symbol of Peace saw him as a sort of toy to mess with, breaking for his own amusement with little encouragements to keep the boy from giving up, only prolonging how long he'd be in pain. Yayorozu, after their game of Truth or Dare, offered up a guess that All Might is quirkist, and believed that Midoriya is quirkless, and, as such, grew a negative view on Midoriya, although Tenya isn't quite sure how All Might would know this, but Todoroki had said that they all needed to discuss something when they had a chance after the camp, once they could meet up with Shinso again, and Tenya assumed that this answer may have been the planned topic. Even Kirishima seems to know that something is amiss, but he never offers a why. All he offers is a despondent, Midori bro doesn't deserve this man. He's too good. Which Tenya is always ready to agree with. Tenya's never understood why All Might would choose to hurt Midoriya, why All Might would pick Midoriya out of all the aspiring heroes in training at UA, why All Might would want to see such a good, giving person be torn down so brutally. And then, not long after Bakugo is rescued, not long after the group has escaped the fights area and has found themselves in a crowd of people staring at a television, Tenya gets his answer. Because All Might deflates. Deflates. In a single moment and a cloud of smoke, All Might shifts from the massive, towering figure that Tenya has seen him on the news as for years to a thin, wiry version. He looks like a sick, emaciated parody of himself, even his signature bangs flopping into his face, but that's not what matters to Tenya, not in this moment, no. It's the gasp that escapes Bakugo, a gasp that everyone but Midoriya hears. Midoriya, who is too transfixed on the screen, too lost in his own head, too busy tearing up as the biggest fight in history wages on, to hear how Bakugo mutters, "That's his goddamn dad. Icy hot, how the fuck were you right?" And suddenly Tenya knows why, with sickening clarity, because Izuku Midoriya is the son of All Might. Hitoshi watches the screen with wide eyes, watches as All Might deflates before his very eyes, watches and almost wants to laugh with disbelief. He's seen this man, this withered corpse of a living being, around Midoriya. He's seen this man on the streets, seen him in the halls talking to his friend, and he never even thought to question it, to question who this strange blonde man was and why Midoriya knew him. How many times has he let All Might near Midoriya without even knowing it? How many of those times was Midoriya left with another injury? If we miss something like this, what else could we be missing? The question is an ugly one that makes Hitoshi worry for his friend. He wishes, not for the first time, that Midoriya could have a better life. One where he didn't have to flinch at sudden noises, one where he didn't have bruises and broken bones to sport after every training session, where he didn't have to stutter his way through a simple sentence. One where he could just be happy, without shaking in fear, without being hurt by the very people he looks up to. A part of Hitoshi wishes that Midoriya never got such a ground and bone-breaking quirk. He wishes that Midoriya got something less noticeable, less exciting, something that would have kept him off of All Might's radar, that would have kept him safe, like a sunshine quirk, one to match his tearful personality, or a quirk based on being happy so that no one would ever get it in their minds to want to hurt him. That part of Hitoshi would even go so far as to wish Midoriya were quirkless, despite the label being one that could do so much harm to the boy, because quirkless people are treated as that lower than those with villainous quirks, but then All Might would never lay a hand on Midoriya. Hitoshi wishes for a lot. He just wishes that one of his wants would come true, that Midoriya would finally be left alone. Until then, it seems that he'll just have to be more vigilant, and that he can do. He'll do anything for his first real friend. Chapter 12. Into the dorms. Discussions to be had. Izuku is happy to be moving into the dorms. Really, he is. Sure, it means he won't see his mom as often, and the circumstances that led to the creation of the dorms are awful, but at least he'll get to see his friends. And now he doesn't have to take the train to go to school every day, which means he has more time to train, get stronger, and prove himself to All Might in the world. One of the only downsides, other than the aforementioned lack of time with his mom, is that he wasn't able to bring a lot of his hero merchandise. Actually, his mother had suggested not bringing any of it, which Izuku had protested until she kindly pointed out that there was a chance his posters could be destroyed. "You're living in the dorms because the teachers are afraid of villain attacks," his mom pointed out as they ate. "As much as I hate to say it, I wouldn't be surprised if those nasty villains try attacking the dorms." So yeah, Izuku left his posters and figurines at home, and only took what he needed. He did grab his notebooks, of course, because villain risk or not, he will have his notes on him. He can always rewrite them after all. It doesn't take long to unpack his stuff, and Izuku smiles as he places his final notebook in place. Just like that, he's here. It almost feels like a way of confirming that he's still in 1A, still at UA despite the hardships of the first term, despite how everything feels like a dream some days. No matter what happens, Izuku Midoriya is still here, and he'll be here to stay. When Shoto heard that all of 1A had to be moved into the dorms, he had feelings that had been mixed. A part of him was relieved, glad that he'd be away from his father, away from his training, the sperm donor loved to inflict on him. Another part screamed because while Shoto was getting away from his tormentor, Midoriya was not. No, Midoriya was being forced closer to his awful excuse of a father, was being forced to stay in the man's domain every hour of every day. Midoriya was going to be stuck in the same hell that Shoto had lived in, but Midoriya's would be worse because Midoriya couldn't retreat from UA. Shoto's retreat would be Midoriya's prison, and Shoto wanted to cry at the unfairness of it all. But Shoto doesn't cry, so he didn't. Instead, Shoto made sure that everything was packed, and when the day of the move finally arrives, he makes his way to the UA dorms, taking the time to change his flooring and set everything just so is time well spent, mind running through ideas of how he can keep Midori away from All Might and the rest of UA's staff now that he's going to be on campus permanently. Study sessions would give him an obligation that would force the teachers to leave him be, especially if we complained about any absences. Aizawa-sensei will be more willing to let us leave campus if we go in groups, so anytime one of us wants to leave UA, we should see if Midori wants to tag along so we can get him away from them. If we can explain an activity, a way as a group bonding activity, we'd be able to force the teachers to leave Midori with us. Shoto lets his lips twitch into a hint of a smile as he sets down a potted plant on his dresser. Yes, the dorms may be a major inconvenience to his plans for keeping his best friend safe, but he'll find a way. Finished with his room, at long last, Shoto makes his way down to the common area. He wonders if anyone else is done with their rooms. He'd assume so, as it's taken him quite a few hours to completely redo his, and he's sure that the others won't go so far. He'll admit that he went a bit overboard, but it was worth it in the end, for the sake of comfort, as he did. And it seems that his assumption was correct, as most of his peers linger in the common area and kitchen, clumped into small groups. Shoto's eyes quickly lock onto his best friend's form, and Midori is sitting on the couch with Kaminari, Mineta, and Kirishima. Midori seems to be talking about something that excites him, and his arms are moving nearly as much as he does. Curious, Shoto walks over. "Mind if I join you?" Shoto asks, and Midori startles, whirling around to face him. Shoto feels a rush of warmth fill his chest when Midori's panicked look turns into a happy one, a bright grin stretching across his face. "Todoroki-kun!" Midori cheers. "Of course you can join us." "Midori bro was just telling us about his summer," Kirishima explains, looking invested as he says, "You said Baku bro showed up?" "Yeah," Midori says, nodding excitedly. "Kachan hasn't come over in years, but he came over last night with dinner." "He did?" Shoto asks, and Midoriya's sunshine grin is back on him, filling him with that warm feeling all over again. The warmth overpowers the odd feeling that had begun to settle in his chest, making him sigh in relief. "Yep. Kachan didn't stay long, though. Just muttered something about how I needed to eat before today, then stormed off." Despite the meager outcome, Midori still looks delighted by the statement, and Shoto can't help but smile at his friend. "I told you guys, Baku bro's a good friend." Kirishima cheers, only to be whacked on the head by the aforementioned blonde. Where he appeared from, Shoto has no clue. "Deku and I aren't friends, shitty hair." Bakugo protests, eyes narrowed. "I just know the nerd gets too fucking hung up on things like this, forgets to take care of himself." Rage turning on Midoriya, he says, "And you better have eaten that goddamn—" "I did," Midoriya assures, chuckling nervously. "Thank you, Kachan." "Whatever," Bakugo mutters, looking away. He seems ready to storm off, but then Ashido is clapping her hands and yelling for everyone's attention. "The girls and I were talking," Ashido starts, clapping her hands together, "and we decided that we should do a room viewing competition." Shoto looks at Midoriya, who seems vaguely interested in the idea, then decides that that's enough to also partake in the competition as well. "All right," Shoto agrees, and the others do as well, and so the room viewing begins. Shoto isn't really interested in the differences, if he's being honest, but it seems to make Midoriya happy for everyone, even Bakugo, to be involved in something, and he refuses to be the one to upset his best friend. He will admit that some of the rooms are nice, such as Sero's more Asian-styled room and Bakugo's surprisingly neat room, but he really only was interested in seeing what Midoriya's is like. And it's not what he expected. Midoriya's room is rather plain, surprisingly, with bare walls and a barely filled desk. Shoto can't help but be shocked. He'd expected more. Midoriya's the kind of person to show off their passions, after all, and the only real signs that the room is Midoriya's are the familiar notebooks lined up on the desk's shelf and the bright yellow backpack in the corner of the room. "Your room is pretty empty, Deku-kun," Uraraka notes. "Any reason why?" My mom suggested that I leave my hero merch at home," Midori explains, and suddenly Shoto is grateful for the plain walls. He'd probably start a fire if he saw All Might's face staring back at him. "Well, I guess we'll have to fix up your room ourselves, won't we?" Uraraka continues cheerfully, but Shoto notes the anger that burns at the reminder of All Might. "Huh? I agree," Ida cuts in, arm chopping with determination. "We can take pictures of our times together, so that your walls aren't so dull." "Really?" Midori asks, eyes wide with surprise. I'd love that, guys." "Then we'll be happy to do it," Shoto assures quickly, and Midori beams right at him. And yeah, that's enough for Shoto to be happy for the rest of the afternoon, but the reminder of All Might is one that makes him reach for his phone when Midori isn't looking, sending a text to the Midoriya Protection Squad group chat. Meet me at my room tonight. Shota needs to make sure that they're all caught up. Kyoka Jiro's quirk has its downsides, just like most quirks do. For one, it's not really the strongest or the flashiest of quirks, and that stuff sort of matters in the world of heroics. Second of all, Kyoka has gotten quite a few looks for her earphone jacks from people who can't mind their goddamn business and think that her appearance is something that they need to take the time to judge. And third, the worst of all, in her opinion, everything is loud. Always. It's like if someone put on headphones, expected them to be the lowest volume, and instead the song was blasting in their ears once they had started the music, every single day. And sure, it means Kyoka has an easy time finding something funny to hear, especially if she's plugged into the wall, but damn, sometimes she finds out things that she really shouldn't know. Like, for example, how her classmate is apparently being abused by his father, who's the #1 hero and their teacher, All Might. What the fuck? Kyoka storms out of her room, each overheard bombshell re-exploding in her ears with every step. I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page, especially now that Bakugo has confirmed the worst part of my knowledge. She enters the elevator. The reason All Might is abusing Midoriya is not because of Midoriya's habit of idolizing heroes or because he got stuck with such a destructive power. She storms out of it, now on the 5th floor. All Might is Midoriya's dad. He left when Midoriya was falsely diagnosed as quirkless and only came back to make him suffer for being a late bloomer, potentially trying to ruin his dreams of becoming a hero. She knocks on Todoroki's door, ignoring how her fist bangs against it far too harshly to be calm. She's not fucking calm anyways. The door opens and Kyoka takes in who all's there. Todoroki obviously is present, but so is Uraraka Ida, Yaomomo, Bakugo, Kirishima, and even that one kid from Gen Ed that got pretty far in the sports festival. Did you need something? Todoroki asks, eyes cautious, but Kyoka's eyes are blazing as she pushes her way in, narrowing them at everyone before speaking. You all should know better than to gossip where some of us can always hear, Kyoka warns, and a few of the peers actually pale before she continues. Either way I want in. Nobody hurts the fucking Sunshine Child on my watch. Tell me everything. And they do. By the end of the night, Kyoka wishes that she had been the one up against All Might, so she could have made his ears bleed. But the new term is beginning, and Kyoka will find a chance to make up for mischances. Mark her words. All Might won't know what hit him. All right, everyone. This concludes Chapter 12 of Todoroki's Conspiracy. Chapter 13 will be next. Hope you all are still enjoying this fic, and as always, thank you so much for listening.